Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services, Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, and Gettles High Desert Mechanical. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We have got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Bradshaw Mountain Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers. She'll talk about the atmosphere at state competition and the training associated with the sport. We'll then be joined by Chino Valley cross-country co-coaches Marc Metz and Aaron Smoot. They'll discuss their returning group of state qualifiers. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Lee Williams cross-country coach Joan Abraham. She'll discuss her coaching strategy and how she develops talent for the program. All of that and a whole lot more coming up right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. I am joined by Lee Williams cross-country coach Joan Abraham. Coach Abraham, welcome onto the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, we're very happy to have you. First and foremost, congratulations on finishing the 2020 season. It was a nightmare for all of us dealing with masks and no masks and sports, no sports, but we were able to get the season finished. The boys program finished very well last season. Placed 8th at state last year, returning some great players, returning sophomore Wyatt Pickering. He was a freshman last year, obviously. And of course, now returning senior, was a junior last year, Elisha Davis for the boys team. So 2 top returners for you this year coming back. How are things looking on the boys side, Coach?
So far, pretty good. Wyatt, unfortunately, is still working on rehabbing an injury that he suffered right before state track during the track season. So I'm looking forward. He should be there this week sometime, I hope. Elijah just came out yesterday, was his first day. We had a full week of practice last week, but Elijah's back, and I think he's ready and raring to go and to kind of show what he can do in this season. Both he and Wyatt did really well last season. And like you said, it was a tough season. We went in not knowing if we would get to finish. And then we got to sectionals, and Paige hadn't competed really during the season at all at any of the meets we had gone to. And they showed up at sectionals and they were pretty fabulous.
Yeah.
And they bumped out one team, and we were fortunate enough to make it in the top 3rd at sectionals. And then I was really proud of them. 8th place at state. That's, even in a year where not as many teams qualified for state, that was a big deal. I mean, that was our best finish so far in in actually the history of the school. The school's only been open. This is our 10th year. So it was pretty spectacular. I was pretty proud of that group of kids.
Yeah, and that's awesome. And I know on the girls' side, we'll talk a little bit more here. I know you only had 3 runners last year, but there's a lot of optimism about the girls' side of the cross-country program right now going into this year. How are things looking on the girls' side?
Excited because last year we had 3 girls, and this year we've got 6. So we get to score as a team as long as 5 of them finish. So that'll be a bonus for us. And I know several of the girls ran a lot during the summer, and they came in prepared, and they are doing a little bit better than they had last season. Catalina Robinson is my number 1 girl runner. She's a junior this year, and I think she's pretty excited. She spent the summer running with her middle school sister, so she's prepared. And then I have Rachel Strong, who she is a senior this year, and she is definitely working hard so that she can, place a little bit higher in all of the meets also.
Well, Coach, that's great to hear that the girls program will get an opportunity to compete for a state championship this year. Like you mentioned, last year they only had 3 runners. This year they add 3 more, as they got a total of 6, which is great. Let's talk a little bit about that off season. You mentioned one of your runners was running alongside with her sister at the middle school level. What do you kind of emphasize for the off season, Coach? I mean, are you getting an opportunity to see your team? I know you guys had practice not too long ago, but are you just kind of leave them with, hey, get some running in, try to do some light weights? What do you kind of give your players going into the offseason? I know we're kind of done with it, but I'm just curious, what do you see as the plan for the offseason on a typical year?
Generally, I encourage them, obviously, to run on their own. There's no way that the few practices that we have that are optional, they're not enough. I ended up this summer, we ran together on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and some days there were 2 kids and some days there were 4 or 5 kids. So I didn't have a whole lot, but I know that a lot of them run during the summertime. And I've got some that live our school. Our attendance area goes from the I-40 93 exit all the way to Dolan Springs, which is 50 miles from town. So I've got kids kind of spread out everywhere. They're not going to come into town to practice for an hour and a half. I do incentivize it. If you run 100 miles, you get a t-shirt. And I 2 years ago or 2 summers ago, I actually had a couple of kids that hit the 200 mile mark. So I try
2
and
t-shirts.
1 t-shirt, but it said 200 miles on it. So it was kind of a big deal. And I mean, 200 miles in a summer, it is pretty huge for a high school kid. Yeah. So that was really good. But I had a lot of them run over the summer. Some of them just, they did it in different places because they were on vacation or whatever.
You talk about 200 miles in a summer. I have a hard time just doing 10 minutes on the elliptical after my workouts. I am not a runner. So I as much as I would love a t-shirt for hitting that 100 and 200 marker, I would have a little bit of a hard time doing it. I got to be honest.
Oh, yeah, me too. It's like I try and run with them as often as I can. And I think I might have hit the 100-mile mark. I hope.
Again, we were speaking with Lee Williams cross-country coach Joan Abraham. Coach, freshman class coming in. You mentioned you got 3 new runners on the girls' side. How are those new faces just in general?
They're young. They didn't run during the summer. I think they were kind of coerced by friends to decide, hey, cross country's fun. And so they last minute they decided. So we have already seen in the 6 practices we've had, they've already gotten faster. Their endurance is a little bit better. I talked to them last week, especially, and last night I had my parent meeting and we talked about it. Cross country is tough. We don't have a whole lot of fans. We, a lot of people don't know what we do even at practice, oh, you just run. It's boring. Well, yeah, we run, but this week we were lucky and the city of Kingman allowed us to use the pool. Okay. So we get in a little bit of running inside the pool. So a little bit less impact and definitely cooler. Yesterday it was 97 when we got out of the pool and had to go out and run. So it was a little toasty one yesterday. So we try and do some different things, but cross country is tough. And I tell them, survive the first month. And it gets, we try and have fun at practice, but it gets a whole lot more fun. We have some team traditions that we have worked in that we do every year, and the kids seem to like them and they really enjoy themselves.
Well, Coach, I started the show at the middle to end of October, and I didn't get a chance to talk with too many cross-country coaches last season. But this year I have gotten a chance to speak with, obviously, you, and I spoke with Trina Painter not too long ago of Flagstaff cross-country. And I was under the impression a lot of times that cross country was just running. And that's not the case. There is a lot that goes into cross country with the preparation, with the training, which we'll talk a little bit more about here. But I feel with the show, at least, I myself have gotten a little bit more educated on cross country. I didn't participate in cross country in high school. We don't cover cross country here at Yavapai Broadcasting because it'd be hard to cover. But it is it's something, obviously, learning to run long distance has so many great benefits long-term as well. And just if people, it's a great therapy thing for some people. It's a good way to stay in shape. It's a great way to bond with your kids. I mean, cross country, there's so much more to it than just running long distance.
Right. It is, it's one of those sports. You can't really play football for the rest of your life, but if you take care of yourself, you can run for the rest of your life. I want to be one of those 80-year-olds that are out at the 5K in town and I'm still running. I run with my kids. Last week, I kind of laughed. I tried not to be hurt, but one of my kids says, "You are in amazingly good shape for your age." I'm
no.
How old do you think I am? It's like, I'm old, but I'm not that old, but I do. I run with them. And most of the time when the season starts, I've got kids that run behind me, but by the end of the season, most of them are running faster than me, which they should be because I don't really work too much on my speed. I definitely work on theirs. But yeah, cross country, and it's mental. You have to talk yourself into, I can do this. We run Flagstaff. They have an amazing program up there. They have the high elevation. We're kind of middle of the road. We're, lower than Flagstaff, but we're way higher than Phoenix. So we have, a bit of a nice spread there. We can go up to the Wallapies that are just 15 minutes out of town and we can get that 5,000 foot elevation. And our school where it's at, we have hills everywhere. Up and down. And it's tough. We, on Fridays when we don't have school, we go and run someplace else in town that's flat because we don't always run in places that are hot, have hills and things like that. So we do what we can, just, talking about it and the mental part. And again, I tell them, if you can survive the first month of practice, it gets way easier. We try and have fun. It is hard. It's hard work and having to go out and just run. But we try and, we do abs and core work just about every day. Later in the season, we'll work on some speed work and we'll do some stuff on the track. But most of the time, we really don't run on the track. We run around the town, and on the back roads that some of the kids have never seen before.
Right, because unlike track and field, you're not running on a track. You're running a course with cross country. So running around the town gives you that sort of the ground level is changing constantly. The surface is changing constantly, which is something you will see during a cross country meet. Coach, I want to get in a little bit more about some of those preparation and development things that we've been talking about. The strategy of cross country is something that I am engrossed in. I'm very curious about it because, like I mentioned, I have a very base knowledge of cross country so far. And I know there's a lot more to it than just running. Like you mentioned, there is a mental aspect of it. You're not only racing against other people, but you're also racing against a clock. You have to finish within a certain time. You're running at state, it seems like there's like 40, 50 other kids that you're running alongside with. And I know I'd be in that situation with the mental aspect where I'm seeing people pass me early on and going, oh man, am I going too slow? I might have to speed up a little bit. But at the same time, you don't want to run because it's distance running because you're trying to make the time, but you're also trying to last the entire course. So Coach, I want you to kind of break down a little bit more for that strategy for me here with cross country. I mean, what are you specifically looking for when you're preparing your team for a meet? I mean, what are you specifically preparing them for? I know you guys got a meet coming up September 15th, but I'm just curious, what is the strategy of cross country and what is your preparation and development with these kids throughout the season?
Well, we really start, obviously, you've got to have that base. You have to be able to run. The majority of our races are a 5K, so 3.1 miles. So we work on that and we work on getting the time down. A couple of things that we do is, well, once we start, like we do some speed work on the track and I get them used to running, this is how fast you need to run a 400, or this is how fast you need to run an 800. And I say, okay, now you know what this feels like. And we work on pacing. All right, you're going to go a little bit slower on your 800 than you would say on if it were track season, because you have to sustain this 4 times, so we work on pacing and we talk about, all right, and they all have watches. So, okay, your pace is this. And we, there are apps where you can take their full time for the 5K and you can break it down into different categories. And so, all right, this is how fast I want you to run, so that they feel that speed and that distance. It's hard at a race because, like you said, if a bunch of people are passing you, but your pace is this, you have to stick with that pace. Right. Sometimes it works out that you can go a little bit faster. adrenaline on a race day tends to help you with that. But, we also talk about the kids that are on the other teams. All right. So when we're running against Prescott, there's this person is who you need to look for, and you need to try and stay with them. Or when we get down to sectionals, all right. So, in years past, when we were in the Central and we would run against Phoenix teams, all right, Thunderbird kids, you're looking for a kid in a blue shirt with the orange letters on it. That's who you need to run with. Stay with that kid and then work. You can stay behind them, but be ready to sprint it at the end. And so we do a lot of that where we, talk about, all right, you're looking for this person, you need to stay with them. They run a similar time to you. And so really we do a lot of that. But, like I have Wyatt Pickering and he's just, he was a freshman phenom last year. He got 14th at state, and he just did a spectacular job. In the majority of the meets we have in Mojave County, he was the one that led almost every single race, and he can go out faster. Well, then I get other kids, I can go fast like Wyatt, or, and then it's like, okay, but you have to run a little bit slower. So we talk about pacing, and we talk about strategy, and, sticking with somebody that runs a similar pace to you and then trying to beat them at the end.
That's so interesting that you bring that up, that individual looking at somebody and going, they're kind of like you mentioned with the Thunderbird kids, when you guys were racing out of the Central, you go, hey, you got to look for this kid. This kid's going to be really fast. He's going to be probably up at the front. We got to get you up to relatively that area. It's interesting that's a part of it, because, you guys are competing in meets. It's not like a football game or a basketball game where it's one-on-one. It's not one team versus another team. In these meets, same thing with swim. It's multiple teams. Even the first swim meet, you've got Kingman, you've got Lake Havasu, along with 4 other schools that are going to be at that competition, where you've got to look at it and go, okay, well, not only do we have to look at this kid from Lake Havasu, but there's also this kid from Kingman, this kid from Kingman Academy, this kid from this school and this school. So it's interesting that you bring up that individual aspect with cross country. So it's kind of nice to see a little bit of the crossover between, like I said, those sports that are one opponent versus another opponent, as opposed to, like what you just said, multiple teams looking just for one kid and going from there. It's an interesting strategy.
Well, and don't kid yourself. The kids on the teams, they know, okay, after the first meet, all right, I have to beat this kid from Mojave and I have to beat this kid. And they go out and they chase after them, or they lead them the whole way. And sometimes, last year, Wyatt, as a freshman, he went out and he led races. Well, the Havasu guys were seniors and they were experienced and they had run high school cross country before. Wyatt had done a great job in middle school, but the difference between middle school and high school is, it is a big difference. Yep. And so he learned a little bit. He would lead races, and then the Havasu guys would kick at the end, and they would, go ahead and they would beat him. And I know he was disappointed when that happened, but it's like, this is how you learn. You have to find your pace. What are you comfortable with? What do you know you can sustain? And then are you going to have enough at the end to fight somebody? So a lot of times, like at practice, we'll finish our full practice and then we'll run some hundreds where I make them, okay, you got to sprint this. And they're like, but coach, we're tired. Yeah. And at the end of a 5K race, you're going to be tired. So you've got to, we have to prepare for this. So we try and do everything we can to get them ready for those races. And a lot of it is mental. It's an individual sport. Yes, we're a team. And in the end, there is a team score. But as an individual, you don't have, in cross country, you can't count on the person, the other kid on your team. Yeah, we always like to have our little Danny Diaz from McFarland, somebody who can come up, in the end and surprise us and do a great job. And there are a lot of those. That's always great. But you have to count on yourself. It's you and only you. And how well are you going to do today? It's, think about it and work on it and do your best to, make yourself proud.
September 15th is the first meet for the Lee Williams Volunteers, and Coach Joan Abrams' team is ready to go. Coach, congratulations on completing last year. Best of luck with the season going forward, and good luck on September 15th, and keep us posted on what happens.
All right. Thank you.
All right. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be joined by Bradshaw Mountain Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers right here on Off the Bench. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Gettles High Desert Mechanical and Rice Accounting, Jackson Hewitt Tax Services. I am joined now by Bradshaw Mountain High School Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers. Coach, welcome onto the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, congratulations first and foremost on finishing the 2020 season. I know it was very annoying with all the COVID restrictions in and out and us having sports and not having sports and having to wear masks and not having to wear masks. But last season, the Bears were able to place in Division II show cheer last year. Coach, I really want to get an idea of the atmosphere at these state championships. I didn't do Spiritline or regular cheer at high school. I was a baseball, basketball, and then a theater participant throughout my 4 years at Shadow Hills High School. But I want you to take me into the atmosphere. What's it like being, the week before the state championship or the state playoffs or even the qualifiers? What is the atmosphere like when you guys are there? Just take me into that.
The atmosphere is a little bit crazy. Usually they have it at a high school. We only compete for the AIA end of year events. We don't do outside competitions with independent companies. So it's usually held at a high school. Every team gets its own classroom to warm up in, and it's very much like a conveyor belt. You have your times that you have to show up to, a practice mat, a warm-up mat, a stunting mat, and they just pump you through each station. And then you go in one side of the gym, they call out your name, you do the routine, you go out the other side of the gym. And last year in COVID, we had to go back to our classroom and then watch the award ceremony from there. So usually all the girls sit on the big mat together. And then, of course, when one team is called out and where they placed, you get 20, 25 girls jumping up and down, screaming because they just won a trophy. But it's very energetic, and cheerleaders are naturally energetic and excited, and you get 200 or 300 of those in one room, and you can just imagine the craziness.
Definitely a lot of energy in the room, I would assume.
Yes,
but of course, while you're in competition, though, how does the scoring work? I've noticed some times, some penalty times, just kind of looking at the previous scoring from last season when I was preparing for this interview. What are the officials looking for during competition? How does that all work?
They're looking for energy. They're looking for enthusiasm. They're looking for sharpness. They're looking for skills, how you execute the skill itself, the level of skills. You do have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for your routine. Okay. A minute 30 of that has to be, or less, has to be music. If you go over that minute 30, then you get docked points, like you were saying, for that time penalty. And then, of course, if you go over the 2 minute and 30 second, then you get penalized as well. So it's very quick, very adrenaline rushing, very crazy, short, taxing on your body type thing.
Well, let's talk a little bit more about that specific routine. Throughout the season, are you kind of, putting together one routine for the team to learn throughout the year? Are you making any adjustments throughout the year? I know that injuries happen, of course. So where do you kind of start that preparation leading up to the qualifiers and then the state championship?
So I buy the music at the beginning of the year, and I've already bought the music for this coming year, even though it's in January. We already have the music, and we do halftime routines all of the time. Most of our halftime routines, the dance section is about 30 seconds. So we take pieces throughout the year of those movements that the girls really get. Like when I watch their halftime routine, if I say, this 8-second or this 8 count was very good, very sharp, let's see how we can incorporate it into this music. We'll play around with it, and it's a constantly evolving process until about a month before. The same with the skills, the stunting, the tumbling. We build on those and we learn new stunts throughout the season. And the ones that the girls get and are solid are the ones that we take to competition.
What about the inspiration, Coach? You talked a little bit about, picking the music. You've already got your music picked for the routine this year. Where are you drawing that inspiration? Are you kind of already thinking about the next year's routine, just kind of, listening to the radio, watching a movie? Where are you drawing that inspiration to not only pick, the music that your team will perform to, but also creating the routine around that?
A lot of it is the songs that we listened to the previous year. So we have to use a very specific website to get our music from that the AIA says we have to use. And we buy the rights to the music. And a lot of those companies, they've already made the songs, they're pre-mixed songs. That's what we use. There are some schools in Phoenix and Scottsdale maybe that get totally have their songs mixed custom to them.
Okay.
And I don't really do that. We go through the pre-made mixes and we see what songs we've heard that the girls really liked, and then we pick those songs and we run with it.
Let's talk a little bit about what competitions we could see Bradshaw competing in this year. Are they going to be back in show cheer, and are there any others?
So this year there is a game day, as in previous years, but this year they're really pushing the game day. It's really evolved into something that I think that we could do. We are very much more a game day team than a show cheer team.
Okay.
Just because we do more cheer on the sidelines than we do pom or dance. So that will be coming up in December, and we have really geared our season this year towards doing that game day. We will also do the show cheer. We also have a group of 5 girls that have been through this whole 4 years with us, and they're all seniors now, and they started as freshmen, and they're a really solid group. So we're going to take that group and do just a all girls stunting aspect of the competition. That's on the same day as the show cheer. So it's just those 4 girls, and they go out and they do the stunts and compete individually, for that. So I'm excited to do that because all of these girls I've seen, they have grown exponentially throughout this 4 years, and they've been with us the whole time. And I give them kudos because they came in as freshmen, and most of them knew nothing. A couple of them had done Pee Wee cheer in the past, but they've just learned and taken in so much, and they sharpened their skills, and it's all on them. I can't make them go home and practice, but they do. And that's just amazing.
Again, we were speaking with Bradshaw Mountain Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers. Coach, you talk a little bit about that group of seniors. You've been with the program for about 4 years. So like you said, Coach, this is your first full group of seniors coming through as freshmen into seniors. And what an opportunity for you, like you said, to just watch them grow throughout the years.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit more. You're talking about the stunts and a lot of the off-season workouts, the at-home training. Let's talk a little bit about that training a little bit more. I mean, what are these kids doing throughout the season to prepare themselves for these stunts, for these flips, for these cheers and all this advanced movement? So what are you guys doing? How many times a day do you guys practice? How many times a week? I don't know how many times a day, but what's sort of the training regimen for this?
So unlike most sports, we practice almost all year round.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't get that. We do, for the girls that are already part of Bradshaw that are not freshmen, they try out in April, and then we start practicing in July, the 1st of July, maybe even sometimes the last week of June. And they practice all the way through until most of the times the last game of basketball is around Valentine's Day. Mm-hmm. So it's really a 9-month program. It's not just a football season or basketball season. We practice well before football season starts, and we go all the way up until the last game of basketball.
Yeah, because I mentioned this when I spoke last week with Mingus Union Spiritline coaches. The season, the playoffs don't start until January. But like you said, Coach, cheerleading and Spiritline is a year-round thing where, like you said, it starts in July or June, and we're moving all the way through basically to the end of January. So you're covering football season, you're covering basketball season, like you said. We haven't gotten to the point where we need cheerleaders for baseball and softball season, but Coach, I'd be happy if you and I want to be a part of the first ever cheerleading squad for baseball and softball season, but we could talk about that some other time.
Well, and they have what's called mat maids for wrestling. Back east, it's huge. Here, I have not seen it, but back east, they call them mat maids, and they're cheerleaders for wrestling. The girls this year have made posters for golf and track and the swim team. And so they definitely are thinking more sports than just the football, basketball this year. As for the times that they practice or the amount of time, we practice every morning, Monday through Friday. So we start at 6:00 in the morning before school. And then after school, usually I give them homework, and we communicate just like most teams through a messaging app. And so I'll throw out homework that they need to do. I'll post videos that they need to learn dances and say, okay, we're going to do this band dance. You need to come prepared. You need to know at least what the music is, what the basic movements are, because we're just going to drill it. And so they need to practice that on their own. And then, of course, I encourage them to work out every day.
Yeah, how interesting. Another crossover with just sports. I mean, obviously, Spiritline has a competition aspect. There's a championship aspect, just like we see with other sports. And you talk about the homework. It's almost like you're giving them a playbook, very much so, where you're going, hey, these are the plays we're going to be running this week, or these are the plays that we need to know before state. You need to figure it out.
Yeah. And most cheer teams have 50 to 100 cheers that they learn. And that's kind of like their playbook. They have to memorize those cheers and be able to do it when called at any moment in time.
Right.
So it's a pretty big playbook.
Well, yeah, and you had talked about it. There was a 30-second routine that you mentioned. There's obviously the 2-minute and 30-second routine. There's the normal cheers that I'm sure they're learning just for the regular season, just like during football season, during basketball season, stunts, flips, all that stuff throughout the year. So, Coach, I want to ask a little bit more about how you pick your team. I'm not sure if you're getting a lot of kids coming in with experience prior. You had mentioned that core of senior girls that you have had some experience with prep cheer. What are you looking for when you're putting together your squad?
Basically, I have more of a teaching philosophy. I tell the girls, if you don't know a lot, that's okay. I can teach you how to cheer. I can't teach you to be a good person. I can't teach you to be a positive person. I can't teach you to have energy. So I look for those girls that are naturally, or even athletes. We've had some guys before, and I miss the guys that we have had, but we can teach them how to physically do the skills. We can't teach them to be bubbly. We can't teach them to be nice. We can't teach them to have a good work ethic or good attitudes. They need to come in with that, and they need to come in with a drive to learn. And then we can teach them all the skills that they are lacking.
Well, again, Coach, it's very much like we talked about. It's very much like, here's the playbook. You either figure it out or you don't. I mean, realistically, you either come prepared or you don't. Just like this interview, I had to come with questions prepared. I had to look into the background a little bit, look into the team, or this interview would have been done in 5 minutes because I wouldn't have had anything prepared. But what about somebody who's new to Spiritline? You talk about, obviously welcoming in some new kids every year, and you like to look at it from that teaching aspect. So how do you approach somebody who, might have some of those intangibles you're looking for, but aren't necessarily like, they're not nailing everything just yet. So how do you approach somebody who's new to Spiritline?
We just make sure it's drilling. It just like in football practice, you run the same drill over and over again until everybody in the formation knows their route to take. But that's what we do. We do the cheers over and over again. And when we learn one on Monday and we learn one on Tuesday, we'll do Mondays. And then on Tuesday, we'll go back and review Mondays and then teach Tuesdays. And then on Wednesday, we go back and do the other two and teach another one. So they get the repetitiveness. And, we give them tips and tricks on how to remember things. And sometimes they put movements to words in a song so that when they hear that word, they know what movement needs to happen with that word. So it's a ever evolving being of life, really.
Yeah, and very much so. I mean, we've talked about it throughout this interview, just like all the training and preparation that goes through. You're learning routines. Like you said, you're adding things throughout the year that they're still learning. There is so much. I said this last time when I spoke with Mingus Union Spiritline coaches. There is so much more to this than just getting a pair of pom-poms and going go team out on the sidelines. I mean, there really is. I mean, people are getting hurt doing this. This is a very intense sport when it wants to be.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of fun. But before we let you go, Coach, again, we were speaking with Bradshaw Mountain High School Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers. Coach, goals for the program this year. Where are we at?
Goals for the program, we got a new band director this year. We are really working with him he came in with a bunch of new songs that we didn't have band dances to. So we've been learning with those and getting ready for those Friday morning rallies that the school does. And we're doing more community outreach. You'll see us this year out in a lot more parades this year and some community events, community service events. And then, of course, and more sports programs. That's what we're really trying to do is create a community atmosphere, really getting out there so that the community doesn't just see us as people that stand there and look pretty at a game. Right. They want to see us out there working. We want them to see us giving to the community and really being a part of them, not just a social elite team.
No, and it's so funny. You always think of cheerleaders. The first thing you think of is like a 1980s movie or some sort of teen comedy where they're all snotty and mean and stuff like that. But I've had great interactions with the cheerleaders. Not so much in my job now because I'm up in the booth most of the time. But when I was in high school, when I was covering sports in my previous job, everybody was always so nice. And Coach, you're very nice, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on and talk about
Thank
your
you.
program. There is so much more to Spiritline, and I'm happy to learn more and more about it. Coach Christina Johnston-Meyers of Bradshaw Mountain High School, thank you very much again for coming on the show. We look forward to seeing your phenomenal program out on the sidelines this year at Bradshaw Mountain.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Of course. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, more sports right here on Off the Bench. Stay with us.
Starting in the late 1920s, Grandpa Gettle and his brothers laid the groundwork for what would become a family legacy. Almost 100 years and 100 patents later, Gettle's High Desert Mechanical continues to raise the bar of quality heating, cooling, and plumbing products and services in the Verde Valley.
Call Gettle's High Desert Mechanical Heating, Air Conditioning, and Plumbing at 567-2200 or online at GettlesHDM.com, providing solutions for your comfort. Don't settle. Get Gettles.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I'm joined now by Chino Valley High School cross-country co-coaches Marc Metz and Aaron Smoot. Coach Metz, Coach Smoot, welcome on the show.
Thanks for having us. Thanks.
And if you guys, for those of you who are watching at home on Verde Valley TV, if you're curious who is who, Coach Metz has the goatee and Coach Smoot does not. So there you go. Now you know who's who. But guys, thank you very much for coming on the show. Congratulations on finishing a very hectic 2020 season. I know there was a lot of worry that there wouldn't be a season, masks, no masks, competition, no competition. But the season was completed. And let's talk about it, guys. How did state go? Take me into the atmosphere of state. I know Coach Metz, you handle the boys side of the cross country program. Coach Smoot, you handle the girls side. But of course, you both work alongside each other. So take me through the season. How did it go last year? What was state like? We'll start with Coach Metz.
I'll start here with the boys. It went really well. I was a little nervous to see how we do this year, especially starting online, having to wear masks, figure out what's going on. Some of the meets were even different because we had to go there at a certain time. We couldn't go early and warm up. We had a certain amount of time. And normally, a lot of the times, one race will go like the JV girls will go, the JV boys, varsity, they're all separate. Some races we had, they were like a minute apart. And so it was a weird, different season to be coaching, but it ended out very nicely. We didn't have any meets canceled. We had a really great season for the boys, and we got at sectionals, just getting into the top 3 was the best we've ever done, and being able to do that, and then getting to state and getting the place we did was really good. We were the highest we've been in a while, but some of that because the reservation schools didn't have cross country this year, and normally they're, especially in Division III, they're really good. And I was really excited because we didn't have a senior in the top 7. So I had a really good season, and I'm really happy with this next season coming up.
Coach Smoot, how about you? How did things fare for the girls?
Pretty well. We made it to state, which is something we only do every couple of years or so. And the year before, we had one athlete make it, and so we finished in the top 3 at sectionals and able to make it to the meet. And then we had graduated 2 seniors, so it'll be interesting for this year, see who steps up. But otherwise, it went pretty well.
Take me into the atmosphere of state playoffs leading up to it. I mean, what is it like when you guys are competing, and what does it feel like the week before? Where's that preparation?
Well, it was interesting. Going into the end of the season, I knew especially the boys had a pretty good shot at making state. And then we realized that the girls probably even have a better shot. But the preparation was really kind of looking at sectionals is kind of we have to get in the top. Usually it's top half. And last year they made it to the top 3rd teams in our section. So a little bit, it was more strict. And, but we are kind of like, hey, I don't want to sound conceited, but looking at all the results and how we've done, we're going to make state. Okay. So let's focus on sectionals, but our goal is really state. So I think for the guys, it was kind of like, hey, let's do this. Let's run like you're capable of, and let's get to state, and not only get to state, because a lot of times we've had that where we just get to state. Let's do well at state. And so that's really our big even push this year.
Coach Smoot, how about you leading up to the playoffs? Where were you at?
We were looking at crunching numbers like all the time just to figure out where we were. And we also didn't know like how many girls teams there were, because that was down this year's the amount of girls teams. So we didn't know if only 2 teams would make it out of sectionals of 3 or 4. So we're just like, try your best, and then hopefully we can get the top 3 and make it to state.
Coach Metz, you've got a good core of now seniors returning back with Dylan Eisner, Andre Comer, Adam Gray, and Stephen Johns. What can you say about this returning group of seniors, and what do those guys bring to this team?
The seniors, they've been running for a long time. My wife coaches at the middle school, and there's one middle school program. So obviously I know who's coming up. And so they've been running since 5th and 6th grade. So I've known these kids for a while, and for them to be seniors, and they've improved so much. They weren't some of the top runners at Heritage at the middle school. Mm-hmm. And for them to come here and they're being part of this team and really stepping it up and being some good runners in the section and even the state and the senior leadership. And what I really like is that they've taken not only just the initiative to do well, but also being able to get some of those younger kids developed. And one of those would be like my son, who's only a sophomore, and getting him going, and like Javier, who's a sophomore. So getting others involved.
Coach Smoot, how about you? Same thing. You mentioned you got a couple seniors graduated last year. How are the returners looking for this year?
We have 4 returners. We have our top returner back, Leslie Estrada. She's one of our top. She's been for the past 3 years now, so she's been really well for us. Worked really well. And then our others, we do a lot of recruiting off the track team. We also coach track, so I was doing a lot of recruiting, trying to get some of our mid-distance runners, like the 400s, people to step up and run for us. And so far, it's worked really well. They're looking really good. So.
Well, that's good for you. You guys get an opportunity to sort of poach from your own program. Like you mentioned, you guys are also coaching track and field. So it's like, well, hey, if you're already going to be running for us later in the year, how about what are you doing in the fall?
Exactly.
Again, we were speaking with Chino Valley High School cross-country co-coaches Marc Metz and Aaron Smoot. Like we mentioned, the Cougars, just like everybody else, are officially starting their season here in 2021. Guys, let's Coach, you mentioned it. Your son Quentin is one of the returning sophomores. You got a nice core of young players coming in, along with Javier Johns, along with Quentin, of course, and Preston Green, all freshmen last year coming back as sophomores. They've experienced now in the state playoffs because they all placed at state last year. What are your plans to continue to see this group develop? And who else are you excited? Newcomers, new faces, new additions to the program. Who else can we see step up next year? Or this year?
Well, in track, Quentin really made a big jump. He was about my number 3 or 4 runner last year in cross country. And I don't know what happened. He ran the off season and all of a sudden he really solidified himself as the number 1 runner. So last year we did well as a team, but we didn't have that top runner like a lot of good teams have. And I think this year now with the good pack that we have, and then Quentin being the number 1 runner. And I think, it's different because I'm his coach, but I'm also his dad, is that right. He can be one of the top runners in state and one of the top sophomores in state. So he could place top 25 at the state meet. And that really helps out in team scoring when you have over 100 there. Some of the newcomers we have, it's funny that you say newcomers, that they kind of aren't newcomers because I sort of had talked to them a lot at the middle school level. But like Austin Rawlison, he's a kid as freshman. He stepped it up and he's going to challenge for that top 7. We didn't have any, like I said, we didn't have any of the top 7 graduate for boys, but he's going to make some noise there. Trent Swick is another one. He's a junior. He's going to be there. And another freshman, Landon Smith. I think those 3 will kind of help challenge some of those varsity runners and hopefully make everybody get better.
Coach Smoot, same thing to you. Any girls this season that you're excited about coming into the program?
We have Maddie Metz, Coach Metz's daughter. And then we have Jacqueline Ocampo, who is on our 4x1 team that made it to state. And she's really getting better. And then we have Karina Trujillo, who is she's continuing on. This is her 2nd year. She's also one of those track people who last year wasn't for sure she wanted to do it, and then we talked her into it. And then we have a transfer from Kingman Academy that will help us a lot. That's a sophomore. And then there is 2 other sophomores that I talked into from track, Isabel O'Brien and Brooklyn Bates, and all those will help. And then we have Brianne Petty, who plays softball and then also does cross country, who's really helped us last year.
Hey, you guys are quite the negotiators doing all this cross recruiting within your programs.
It's cross country is not the easiest of sells here, like football and basketball.
Well, and it's a relatively smaller roster as well, so you kind of have to be a little bit pick and choose with who you bring on and the best runners and stuff. Coach, you mentioned Coach Metz. You mentioned that your son Quentin is on the team. Your daughter is on the girls' side of the program. How does it feel for you to get an opportunity now to coach your kids? Obviously, you've been coaching them, but what's that dynamic like for you? Coach Smoot, do you feel any pressure now that you're coaching Coach Metz's daughter? Where are you guys at with the Metz family coming into the program?
Well, I'll start because it will lead to him. So my oldest just graduated, and she's one of the graduate seniors, and she's running now in college at Bethany Lutheran. And one of those things where my son is pretty easy to coach. My daughter, Maddie, who's on the team, is pretty easy to coach. Emmeline, and she's probably going to listen to this and say dad, but sometimes, I'm her dad, not just her coach. So I said, Coach Smoot, you get the girls and you get to coach my daughter. So, but it's fun, and especially seeing them at home. And then my wife's there, coached them at middle school, and she came to the meets a lot last year and coaching them. So that is kind of a different thing for being dad, but being coach at the same time. But it's a good one and good relationship with them.
Coach Smoot, I mean, like I mentioned, you get an opportunity to coach Coach Metz's daughters. I mean, do you feel any pressure when you got the coach's kids there?
No, Coach Metz is pretty easy to work with. And I tell them we work back and forth on everything we do, on workouts and everything, and just, how we talk to athletes, and it's not that much pressure at all.
Let's talk about you guys developing that relationship as coaches. I mean, how did it start, and how is it now?
Well, this is my 20th year coaching at Chino Valley High School. And before that, I was at Heritage Middle School. So I've been around here. My wife coached 1 year and then got pregnant with my oldest. So then I took over. And so then I was coaching with another coach, and then her youngest graduated. So she goes, I'm not going to do it. And he came new to the district. I said, hey, and we just started talking about running. And I said, do you want to be coach? And he said yes. So it worked out pretty good. And we have a great relationship, and he's easy to work with. And I hope I'm easy to work with and bouncing ideas off of.
Coach Smoot, same question to you.
Yeah, no, it's been really good. I came in from Missouri, and I was a distance coach there. And then I took a year to get to know Coach Metz a little bit. And we kind of realized, hey, we know, we like distance. So let's just talk about it. And we just it's really easy to bounce ideas off of and try to find things that work and don't work and get everything moving pretty smoothly.
Yeah. And like we just talking with you guys, I know this is kind of the first time I've met you, but it seems like there's a nice dynamic between you two where there's a lot of, push and pull where you two are working well together. And I know, like I mentioned, it's only been about 15 minutes since we've started talking, but there seems to be a nice dynamic between the two. Coach, I just want to ask Coach Smoot, you coming from Missouri, what attracted you to the position in Chino Valley? I mean, what caused the move?
The move was, I just wanted to get out of Missouri pretty much. And I have my grandma lives in Phoenix, and I have friends here nearby that live nearby, and they have a place I could stay. So I was like, hey, how about I stay here? But as far as coaching, I've always liked coaching distance is something I got into, and then it just kind of graduated to where I started coaching high school, and then this opportunity came available, and I was like, I'll take it.
I want to ask goals for the program this season. The season is underway, but we're going to start with you, Coach Metz. What goals do you have for your program this year? And then we'll finish with Coach Smoot.
For like I was saying, with individuals, Quentin for top 25 is kind of a goal to be all state. And then our team really, where I was just looking on the board, I don't know if you can see it behind us, I was writing it down for the kids at practice this morning, is get everybody under the top 5 under 18 minutes in a 5K.
I was curious what all those numbers were, Coach. I honestly just figured you were a math teacher, and I was like, they're doing something with math. I don't know.
No, I'm the world history teacher, but yeah, we had 2 under 18 last year, and we're pretty close. So I'd like to get at least 5. I think we might be able to get 7 under 18. And I think we're trying. I mean, I'd like to get really to win sectionals is a high goal. We have a team in front of us, Shadow Mountain, who won it last year, who did not graduate anybody either.
Wow.
But that's my goal. If nothing else, top 2, top 3 would be good. And then at state, the best our boys have ever done has been top 8. And that was when we were 3A. Now it's Division 3, which is a little bit bigger. But I think the goal for me is still to do the best Chino Valley has ever done, because we have a good group. They're returning, a lot of seniors, and we have our front runners. So for the boys, that's my goal.
Coach Smoot, same question.
All right. Yeah, for ours, I'd like to make it to state. We have new runners, and we're kind of our 2 and 3 runner graduated. So we're looking for who will step up. We would like to still finish in the top 3 at sectionals. That'd be good to stay there, and which would, because this year they're taking half. So to stay in the top 3 would be good. But yeah, and then Leslie, I'd like to see her in the top 25. She's really close. The past couple of years, so it'd be nice if she got all state as a senior.
Yeah, Leslie Estrada, the returner you mentioned, amongst a few other returners for both sides of this program here. Again, We are speaking with Chino Valley High School cross-country coaches, Marc Metz and Aaron Smoot. Coach Metz handles the boys' side. Coach Smoot handles the girls' side of the program. Guys, before we let you go, looking forward into the schedule here, any meets you guys are excited about? Any teams you're excited to get another opportunity to compete against?
Well, I mentioned one for the boys, Shadow Mountain. They're ones in our section that they're the top, and I'd like to take a crack at them. The meet always, I think in the state, the good one is Desert Twilight, and it's down in Queen Creek. It's night race, a lot of fast teams. I want to say there was over 200 teams signed up. Some of them those are middle school, so probably over 150 high school teams from different states as well, and very fast. And last year our boys won the small school division for that, and I'd like to go back and try to do the same thing, and then obviously get into the end. We go to a California trip, and that's planning depending on what the situation is with travel restrictions and everything. But we're planning to go to California kind of for a fun meet and to have a little experience over there.
Coach Smoot, same question. Anybody you're looking forward to?
Well, with the girls, it's the best team. Like, we were going to St. Mary's Catholic in our section. They're pretty good. They beat us just barely, and it'd be nice to get them this year. And then as far as meets, Twilight's always fun. And the California trip, we missed it last year, so to go this year would be really great. Mm-hmm.
I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. I'd like to thank Lee Williams, cross-country coach Joan Abraham, and Bradshaw Mountain Spiritline coach Christina Johnston-Meyers, and of course, the two coaches in front of me, Chino Valley High School cross-country co-coaches Marc Metz and Aaron Smoot. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the show, and best of luck here on the rest of the season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for this episode of Off the Bench. I'm your host, Philip Katafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.